There is a vision so extreme that most scholars spend centuries debating whether it should be taken literally. Creatures with 4 faces, wheels inside wheels, covered in eyes, a firmament like crystal suspended in the air, fire that did not burn, a rainbow that did not follow rain, a throne and a voice and a presence that broke every category human language had constructed for the divine. His name was Ezekiel, and the first thing God said to him was not, "Do not be afraid." It was, "Son of man, stand on your feet." Not a comfort, a command. Because what Ezekiel was about to receive was not primarily for him. It was for a people who had made themselves impossible to reach, and God was going to reach them anyway, through the most unlikely instrument imaginable, a priest in exile, a man without a temple, a voice without a platform. This is not a history lesson. This is a mirror. And if you look into it long enough, you will recognize the valley you are standing in. Before we can understand Ezekiel, we have to understand the world that produced him. There is a kind of darkness that is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with thunder or declare itself in manifestos. It settles, slowly, across generations, like dust that accumulates on a surface until the original color is forgotten and people begin to assume the dust was always the surface. That was Babylon. Not the Babylon of Hollywood, gleaming towers, theatrical evil. The real Babylon was something more insidious, organized, efficient, a civilization that had perfected the art of making its captives forget who they were. It fed them, housed them, gave them names in a different language, and let them worship as long as the worship did not inconvenience the administration. And it worked. The exiles from Judah were not suffering in the way that suffering announces itself. They were suffering in the way that slow erasure suffers, gradually, quietly, in the growing distance between what they had been and what the empire was making them into. Among them was a young man who should have been a priest. His name was Ezekiel, son of Buzi, of the line of Zadok. In Jerusalem, his future would have been clear. The temple, the altar, standing between the people and the presence of God. But the ark had been broken. The temple was far away. His priestly identity had become a description of something he could not do, in a place he could not reach, for a God who, many of his fellow exiles quietly believed, had perhaps stopped listening. He sat by the river. He watched his people. He waited. And then the sky cracked open. There is a moment in every genuine prophetic life when God stops being a concept and becomes a force. When the theology you have studied becomes an encounter you cannot categorize. When the distance you maintained collapses in a single overwhelming instant, and you are left with nothing between you and the full weight of divine reality. That moment came for Ezekiel on the banks of the Chebar. He was 30 years old, the age at which, in Jerusalem, a priest would have taken up his full temple service for the first time. The age he had been waiting for, except that there was no temple, no service, no Jerusalem, only the river and the flat sky of Babylon. And then the wind came from the north. Not the ordinary wind. Something else moved in the air, a quality of pressure, something the body recognized before the mind could process it. A great cloud came with fire folding in on itself. In the fire, a brightness. In the brightness, 4 living creatures. Above them, a firmament like crystal. Above the firmament, a throne. And on the throne, a form like a man, surrounded by fire and a rainbow. It was the glory, not a symbol of the glory, not a representation, the actual, unbearable, undeniable presence of God beside a foreign river, among defeated people, far from every place that had ever been called holy. Ezekiel fell on his face, not from weakness, from the only honest response available to a human body in the presence of something that exceeds every human category. Then the voice.
Son of man, stand on your feet.
He stood, and in that standing, his entire identity reorganized itself. No longer a priest in exile. He was a mouth, a message, a vessel chosen for a content it had not chosen. The scroll came next, covered on both sides with writing, lamentation, mourning, woe. God told him to eat it. He ate it, and in his mouth it tasted like honey. That is the paradox at the center of every prophetic calling. The message that looks like destruction tastes like truth, because truth, even devastating truth, is a form of nourishment. Ezekiel had been fed truth. Now he had to become it. The first thing God told Ezekiel about his audience was not encouraging. They are a rebellious house, God said. They will not listen to you because they will not listen to me. But you will speak anyway. Not because it will change them immediately, but because it will prove that a prophet was among them. When the thing you warned them about arrives, they will not be able to say they were not warned. This is a specific and uncomfortable kind of assignment. It is not the assignment where you speak and the crowd responds. It is the assignment where you speak into silence, into the contempt settled people reserve for voices that threaten their settlement. Ezekiel knew this contempt. His fellow exiles believed the exile was temporary, that Jerusalem would survive, that the temple would stand. They believed this because they needed to, because the alternative was too large to hold. So they held the smaller story instead. And Ezekiel was the man God sent to take the smaller story away. He did not begin with sermons. God told him to act, to become a living sign, to use his body as the medium of a message that words alone could not carry. He lay on his left side for 390 days, one day for each year of Israel's accumulated rebellion. The people passed him. Some mocked. No one could ignore him, and that was the point. The body in the dust, counting the weight of generations, was more articulate than any speech. Then the shaved head, the hair divided into thirds, 1/3 burned, 1/3 cut with a sword, 1/3 scattered to the wind. The terrible arithmetic of judgment made visible in a single human body. God was not being cruel. God was being specific. This is the calculation of exactly what has been done and exactly what it will cost, written in a language that lands directly in the gut where people actually live. There are things the human heart was not built to hold, and there are moments when the human heart is broken open precisely so that it can hold them. What Ezekiel saw in his visions was not comfort, it was testimony, evidence, the record of a God who refuses to be reduced to a tribal protector, who refuses to inhabit a building from which his holiness has been systematically expelled. The first vision, the chariot, the creatures, the wheels within wheels. But what makes it significant is not its visual complexity, it is its location. God appeared beside a foreign river, not in the temple, not in Jerusalem. He appeared where his people were, in their defeat, in their displacement, in the most unholy geography they could have been placed in. This is the first and most important theological statement of Ezekiel's entire ministry. God is not bound to the places we build for him. The temple could burn, the ark could be taken, and God would still be God, sovereign, mobile, present, beside rivers of Babylon and in the visions of exiled priests. The second vision Ezekiel received was harder. He was taken in the spirit to Jerusalem, and what he found there destroyed the comfortable story permanently. Inside the temple, idols, priests burning incense to the creatures painted on the walls, women weeping for Tammuz, men with their backs to the altar, bowing eastward to the sun. The house of God had become the house of everything that was not God. The most devastating part was not the idolatry. It was that this corruption was internal. The priests, the elders, the people who should have known better, in the most sacred space available, for long enough that it had become routine. Ezekiel watched the glory rise, from the inner sanctuary to the threshold, pausing, as if offering one final moment for the cry of repentance that would stop the departure. The cry did not come, and the glory moved on, over the wall of the city, across the valley, up to the Mount of Olives where it hovered, still waiting, still present, until it was not. It departed. This is the scene no Israelite theology had dared to contemplate, that God could leave his own house, that holiness was not a real estate arrangement, but a relational reality that could be withdrawn when the relationship was systematically, deliberately, repeatedly destroyed. The temple would burn, not because Nebuchadnezzar was powerful, because the glory was already gone. After the visions of judgment, after the oracles against the nations, Tyre, Egypt, Ammon, Moab, the whole catalog of powers that had laughed at Jerusalem's fall. After the news came through to Babylon that the city had actually been destroyed, that the last gates had been broken, that the temple had burned exactly as he had said it would, the Spirit of God came upon Ezekiel again, and this time he was carried to a valley. The valley was full of bones, not freshly killed, ancient bones, dry, disconnected, bleached by a sun that had shone over them so long they had lost whatever quality once made them distinguishable from the surrounding dirt. Not a tragedy waiting to be mourned, a fact waiting to be accepted. Ezekiel walked among them.
Son of man, can these bones live?
It is the most precise question God ever asked the prophet. Not because it is hard theologically, but because of what it requires the answerer to do with their body while answering it. Ezekiel was standing in the valley. He could feel the reality beneath his feet. He was being asked to choose whether he believed the testimony of what he could see or the character of the God he served. He chose the only honest answer. Lord, you know. Not yes, not the triumphant affirmation of someone who has never stood in the valley.
Lord, you know.
Simultaneously, the deepest expression of faith and the most honest acknowledgement of limitation. I do not know how. I cannot map the route from here to there, but I know who you are, and I will let what I know about you speak louder than what I see around me.
Prophesy to the bones.
He obeyed, and the bones moved, tendon to tendon, bone to bone, flesh appearing where there had been only white, skin closing over what had been exposed to the sky. Bodies, complete, fully formed, utterly still, but not yet alive. This is the detail that matters. The resurrection of form without the resurrection of breath. Israel could be returned, the city rebuilt, the temple raised, and still, if the Spirit was absent, it would be a valley of arranged bones, organized, but not alive.
Prophesy to the wind.
He obeyed again. And the breath came from the four corners, and the bodies stood, an army, vast and living and specific.
This is what I will do with Israel,
God said. Not a vision of return, a vision of resurrection, the reanimation of a people by the direct breath of God. Something that had died and been brought back, that knew in every bone exactly what it owed and to whom. And now, in the 25th year of exile, God gave him the final vision. Not judgment, not the departure of the glory, something else. He was carried to a very high mountain, and from the mountain he could see a structure, vast, ordered, symmetrical, suffused with a quality of light that was not the light of the sun. A temple, but not the temple of Solomon. Something the burned temple had only gestured toward, the way all physical structures gesture toward the thing they represent without ever quite becoming it. Perfect, complete, ready. A messenger was waiting, a figure with a measuring line, whose job was not to explain, but to show.
Walk with me. Measure. Look. Record. Because what you are about to see is not for you alone. It is for every generation that will read these words in the darkness of their own exile, in the valley of their own dry bones, and wonder whether the departure of the glory was final.
It was not final. Ezekiel watched as the glory returned. From the east, the same direction it had departed, and as it entered, the earth shook. The sound of it was the sound of many waters. The light of it was the light of the world on the morning the world was made. And God spoke from inside the temple.
Son of man, this is the place of my throne, where I will dwell among the children of Israel forever.
Ezekiel fell on his face, because he understood, with the bodily understanding that only comes through encounter, that what he was witnessing was the permanent intention of God. The thing the Garden of Eden had been the first expression of, the refusal to be absent, the ancient determination to be among, within reach, present. And then the river. From under the threshold of the temple, water. First a trickle, then ankle deep, then knee deep, then waist deep, then deeper than could be waded, only swum. Wherever the river went, life followed. The Dead Sea became fresh. Fish filled waters that had never held fish. Fruit every month, not because the seasons demanded it, but because the source of the river was the presence of God, which does not wax or wane. It simply flows. And wherever it flows, death becomes life. The city at the end of the vision had a new name. Not Jerusalem, not Zion, not the city of David or the holy city or the throne of the great king. The Lord is there. 4 words. The entire theological program of the Hebrew Scriptures compressed into a proper noun. Not what the city contains or produces, what it is. A place where the departure cannot happen again, where the bones cannot dry again, because the thing that made departure possible has been replaced, with a heart of flesh, with a spirit placed within. With the law written not on stone, but on the interior of the people themselves, so that obedience is no longer an obligation imposed from outside, but a desire arising from inside. The way a river arises from a spring, not pushed, flowing, because that is the nature of what it is. Ezekiel had entered the visions as a priest, a man defined by his access to the sacred, by the rituals he was trained to perform, by the institutional role that gave his identity its shape. he emerged as something that has no clean institutional category. A man who has seen what cannot be unseen, who carries what cannot be put down, who speaks what he cannot stop speaking because the alternative is a kind of internal fire that is worse than the cost of speaking. The priest had died in Babylon. The prophet had been born there. And the prophet carried two things simultaneously that most people spend their entire lives keeping separate. He carried the full weight of the judgment. The bones were dry because the bones had chosen the drought. The temple was empty because the people had emptied it. The glory had departed because they had created conditions incompatible with its presence. The judgment was exact. He never walked it back. And he carried, with equal conviction, the full weight of the promise. The bones would live. The river would flow. The glory would return. Not because they deserved it, because God had made a commitment that preceded their failure and would outlast it. Both were true at once. Ezekiel held both, not as a theological position, but as a lived reality, in his body, in the dust of his exile. This is what made him a prophet, not the visions, not the oracles, not the acted signs, the willingness to hold judgment and promise simultaneously, without letting either one cancel the other. Because the temptation is always to choose, to take the judgment alone and become a figure of pure darkness. God is angry, the end is near, every word a hammer, every image a threat. The world has produced that kind of voice in abundance. It is not prophecy. It is a performance dressed in the costume of seriousness, or to take the promise alone and become a figure of pure comfort. God loves you. The river is coming. The world has produced that voice in equal abundance. It is not prophecy either. It is the comfortable story that keeps people from having to stand in the valley and count the bones. Prophecy holds both. Look at the valley. Count the bones. Do not look away from the empty sanctuary or the departing glory. And then prophesy. Not because you know how. Not because you can see the mechanism. Not because you have any basis beyond the character of the God standing beside you in the valley. Prophesy because he told you to, and the bones will move. Ezekiel did not write philosophy. He was a priest who lost his temple, a prophet who spoke to people who refused to hear. He lay in the dirt. He cooked over ashes. He cut his own hair off in public and divided it into thirds. He watched his wife die and was told by God not to mourn visibly, because her death was itself a sign, a message to a people who needed to feel the cost of what they had lost. He gave everything. And the reason it matters, across 2,500 years, is not primarily historical. It is personal. Because what Ezekiel's life demonstrates is not what one extraordinary man endured. It demonstrates what faithfulness looks like when everything that made faithfulness legible has been taken away. The temple, gone. The rituals, suspended. The community, scattered. The prophetic institution itself, discredited by false prophets who had promised comfort and delivered catastrophe. Every prop removed. And Ezekiel kept going. Not because the props were secretly still there, because he had encountered something beside a foreign river, a presence that was not location dependent, a glory that was not institution dependent, a God who appeared exactly where his people were, to tell them the departure was not the end of the story. The river was still flowing. It had always been flowing. They just had to stop filling the channel with the wrong things. The modern world is full of channels filled with the wrong things. Temples emptied of the presence they were built to house. Temples of achievement, of productivity, of self-definition. and filled with the noise and image and stimulation that functions as contemporary incense to the creatures painted on our walls. And the glory keeps departing. Not dramatically, gradually. The way the light changes in late afternoon. So slowly you do not notice, and then you look up and the room is dark and you cannot say when the light left. Ezekiel's question to his generation is Ezekiel's question to ours. What are you filling your temple with? Not the building, the interior, the place designed for the presence of something real and living. What has been set up in there? What incense is burning in those rooms? What rituals have become so habitual that their original object has been forgotten, and only the ritual remains, pointing at nothing? This is not a comfortable question. But Ezekiel was never a comfortable prophet. He was a priest stripped of everything, standing in a valley of bones, looking at the full weight of what death looks like when it accumulates, and still prophesying. Not because he could see how it would work, because he knew who was asking. And the bones moved. They will always move when the word is spoken in faith, and the channel is cleared, and the river, flowing all along, from under the threshold, toward the low places, is allowed to reach you. There is one thing Ezekiel's story demands of you. Not theological agreement, not the correct interpretation of the chariot vision. One thing: honesty. The honesty to stand in the valley without reaching for the comfortable story. To look at the dry bones in your life, in your generation, in the interior landscapes that once held life, and not look away. And then the honesty to ask the question. Not your question, God's question. Can these bones live? Not by my effort, not through the right combination of activity and strategy. Can they live? Is the voice that spoke the world into being still speaking? Is the river still flowing? Is the glory that departed from the east capable of returning from the east? You know the answer. You have always known the answer. The question is not whether God can. The question is whether you will stand in the valley long enough to receive the command and then obey. Prophesy to the bones. Speak to the wind. Even when you cannot see the mechanism. Even when the most honest thing you can say is simply, Lord, you know. Because that is enough. That has always been enough. It was enough in Babylon. It is enough now. Stand up, prophesy, and listen for the sound of bones beginning to move.